Welcome to Mindful English Stories.
Have you ever had an idea, but watched someone else say it first? You knew the answer. You knew you could help, but your voice stayed quiet. Maybe you were afraid of making a mistake. Maybe you were worried about what people would think. Tom experienced this every week. He was not afraid because he didn't know the answer. He was afraid because he didn't trust his own voice. And one day, he decided to change that. This is the story of how Tom learned that confidence does not come before speaking. Confidence comes from speaking. Tom knew the answer. He had known it from the moment his manager asked the question. They were in the weekly team meeting. 12 people sat around the long table. The projector screen showed numbers from the last project. Something was wrong with the data, and no one could explain why. Then his manager, Ms. Chun, looked around the room.
Does anyone have any thoughts?
Tom's heart began to beat faster. He looked at his notebook. He had written the answer 10 minutes earlier. The problem was in the way the team had calculated the third set of numbers. It was not a difficult problem. Tom had seen similar mistakes before. He could explain it in 2 or 3 sentences. But he did not open his mouth. He looked down at the table. He waited for someone else to speak. 5 seconds passed. It felt like 50. Finally, a colleague named David spoke. I think there might be an error in the third calculation, David said. Ms. Chin nodded.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Good catch, David.
Tom said nothing. The meeting continued. When it ended, Tom walked back to his desk quietly. He felt a heavy feeling in his chest. It was not sadness. It was something worse. It was the feeling of letting himself down. He had known the answer, but he had stayed silent. And now David had received the credit. Tom opened his notebook and looked at what he had written. Third calculation uses wrong base number. Should be 240, not 280. It was so simple. But when the moment had arrived, Tom had frozen. He was not afraid of Ms. Chun. She was a kind manager. She always listened carefully when people spoke. She never made anyone feel stupid. He was not afraid of the answer being wrong. He was almost certain it was correct. So why had he stayed silent? Tom thought about it for a long time. Then he realized something. He was not afraid of being wrong. He was afraid of how he would sound saying it. Would his grammar be correct? Would he pronounce calculation properly? Would his sentence sound natural? Would people understand him the first time, or would he have to repeat himself? These were not questions about the meeting. They were questions about his English. Tom told himself he would speak next time. But the following week, the same thing happened. This time, the meeting was about client feedback. One client had asked to change the design. Tom had already worked on a solution. He had prepared one slide with his idea. When Ms. Chin asked for suggestions, Tom's hand did not move. David spoke again. And again, Ms. Chin said,
Great idea, David.
Tom went home that evening feeling angry with himself. He sat on his bed and opened his laptop. He searched for the same question he had searched many times before. How to speak more confidently in meetings. He found hundreds of articles. Most of them said the same things. Prepare your points. Practice before the meeting. Start with a simple comment. Don't worry about being perfect. Tom had read these tips before, but knowing the tips had not helped him. He closed the laptop and lay on his bed. That night, he remembered something from his school days. When Tom was 14, his English teacher had asked him to read a paragraph out loud. Tom had mispronounced one word, determine. He had said determine instead of determine. A few students had laughed. The teacher had corrected him kindly, but Tom only remembered the laughter. That moment had stayed with him for many years. It was not a big moment. The students probably forgot about it after 5 minutes. But Tom had not forgotten. He had learned something that day. Speaking English in front of people was dangerous. If you made one mistake, people would laugh. Or at least, that was what his 14-year-old self had believed. Now, as an adult, Tom understood that this belief was not true. The laughter had not been cruel. The teacher had not been angry. The moment had been small, but the fear had remained. The next Monday, Tom decided to try something new. He did not try to speak in the big weekly meeting. That felt too difficult. Instead, he started small. On Monday morning, a coworker named Lisa asked him,
How was your weekend?
Usually, Tom gave a very short answer. Good. Fine. Not bad. This time, he tried to say a little more. It was relaxing. I went for a long walk on Saturday, and on Sunday, I cooked a new dish. Lisa smiled.
What did you cook?
Tom felt nervous, but he continued. I tried to make a Thai soup. It was too spicy but still good. Lisa laughed.
I love spicy food. You'll have to tell me the recipe.
The conversation was short, maybe 1 minute. But for Tom, it was a small victory. He had spoken. He had not used perfect English. He had not used any difficult words. But he had shared something personal, and Lisa had responded warmly. That afternoon, Tom was working at his desk when Ms. Chen walked by.
Tom, I have a small question about your project. Could you explain the timeline to me?
Usually, Tom would have written a long email with bullet points. But this time, he did something different. Of course, he said. I can explain now. He stood up and walked to the timeline on his computer screen. So, the first part is already finished. We are now working on the second part, which should be ready by Friday. The last part will take another week. I think we can finish everything by the 1st of next month. Ms. Chen nodded.
Thank you, Tom. That is very clear.
Very clear. Tom returned to his chair and felt something surprising. He was not nervous anymore. He had explained the timeline without preparing a script. He had not paused for a long time. He had not forgotten any important words. It was not a big speech. It was only a few sentences. But Tom had done it. That evening, Tom wrote in his notebook. Speaking in a meeting still feels difficult. But speaking in small moments is possible. Maybe confidence is built not in the big meetings, but in the small conversations. He decided to continue practicing in low-pressure situations. The next day, he asked Lisa a question during lunch. Do you think the new project timeline is realistic? Lisa thought for a moment.
Maybe not. I think we need 2 more days for the testing part.
Tom nodded. I agree. I will mention it in the next meeting. Lisa looked surprised.
You usually don't speak in meetings.
Tom smiled. I know. I want to try. That Friday, the weekly meeting arrived again. Tom sat at the table with his notebook open. He had written 2 points he wanted to share. His heart was beating fast. His hands felt cold. But this time, he did not wait for David to speak first. Ms. Chun asked the same question she asked every week.
Does anyone have any thoughts?
Tom raised his hand slightly.
Yes, Tom.
He took a slow breath. I wanted to mention that the timeline for the testing part might be too short. Lisa and I talked about it yesterday. I think we need about 2 more days. If that is okay, I can update the schedule today. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Ms. Chen said,
That is a good point. I was also worried about the testing time. Please update the schedule, and we can review it on Monday.
Tom nodded. I will send it by the end of the day. The meeting continued. But something had changed. Tom had spoken. His grammar was not perfect. His accent was still noticeable. His voice had shaken a little at the beginning. But he had done it. After the meeting, Lisa walked over to his desk.
You spoke in the meeting.
She said. Tom smiled. I spoke in the meeting.
How did it feel?
Tom thought for a moment. Terrifying. And then fine. Lisa laughed.
That is how it always feels at first. Then it becomes normal.
Tom looked at his notebook. The page was still open to the points he had written. He had been carrying the same fear for many years, since the day his teacher had asked him to read the word determine. But today, that fear had become a little smaller. Tom wrote one more sentence in his notebook. I can be afraid and still speak. He read the sentence twice. Then he closed his notebook and smiled. The next week, Tom spoke in the meeting again. And the week after that, he spoke twice. He still made mistakes. He still felt nervous before every meeting. He still sometimes thought about the students who had laughed when he was 14. But he no longer waited for someone else to say what he was thinking. Because Tom had learned something important, his ideas mattered. Not because his English was perfect, but because he was the person in the room who knew the answer. And staying silent did not protect him. It only hid him. If you often know the answer but stay silent, remember Tom. Start with a small conversation. Say a little more when someone asks about your weekend. Explain something simple to a coworker. Share one idea in a meeting, even if your voice shakes. Confidence is not the absence of fear. Confidence is speaking even when you are afraid. And your voice does not need to be loud to be heard. It only needs to begin. Thank you for listening to this English story. If this story felt familiar, subscribe to Mindful English Stories for more meaningful English stories, listening practice, and speaking confidence. See you in the next story.